Welcome back to our third New Year's Eve, New Year's Day meditation, in this case, really, in which we summarize the most impressive, astonishing, or maybe disturbing findings in neuroscience and science in general in the year 2018. Here in the first slide, I give you a paraphrased quote from a man who lived about 2,500 years ago. His name was Siddhartha Gautama. We know him today as the Buddha. Now, he, after many frustrated trials of finding the cause of human suffering and a way of release from human suffering, sat under a so-called Bodhi tree and meditated all night. And upon the ascendance of the morning star that you see here in the slide, he finally gained an insight. And the insight can be really summarized in one sentence. And that is, at the bottom, at the core of human suffering is ignorance. Now, ignorance means many things. You may not know where your car is parked that you left yesterday at the mall, or you may have a profound misunderstanding as your place in the universe and where you fit in the fabric of life here on this planet Earth. It's the latter kind of ignorance that we are addressing here. And there is a powerful metaphor that was expressed in a movie, The Matrix, that you all have heard about. And I'm going to play you a brief clip here from this movie in which Neo is offered a choice, the blue pill or the red pill. The choice being to wake up and to see what is really going on, or to remain in a dreamlike state and just go along with a presentation of reality that is really a virtual reality and not the real thing.
Do you want to know what it is? The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth.
What truth?
That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind. Unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more. Follow me.
And here you see in the next slide the Earth in collision with the human brain. is by Gustav Mahler, who died a few years before World War I, but he might as well have been there and in subsequent catastrophic times because of the prophetic nature of his insight into the fate of humanity that he expressed in this music. A quite hopeless kind of music. And here we are in Berlin, 1945. I was born not long after these videos were shot. So I missed World War I and World War II, thank God. Only to find myself now at the beginning of catastrophic changes that will make these changes we have experienced in the earlier part of the 20th century look like child's play, in my opinion. So I let you view this video, the destruction of Berlin, the apathy in the face of the humans that you encounter here, the numbness of the population after these catastrophic events. You see an image of Stalin being carried around soon here in this video. 20 years after this video was shot, I was in Berlin as a young assistant doctor at a hospital doing my internship. At that time, the Iron Curtain was still in place, of course. And I took many occasions to enter the eastern sector of Berlin, the capital of the so-called DDR, to go to a famous opera house, Unter den Linden. And I remember being so claustrophobic in the city that I had to escape and leave to fly to a vacation in Greece. Now, in the next slide, you see Robert Oppenheimer, the principal physicist who constructed the atom bomb. And here is a video that shows how this bomb was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the tremendous destruction that this caused. Now, I show this for a specific purpose, not just to illustrate the catastrophic events of World War II, but to give you a reference for the power that was released in this bomb. And I will use this reference later to explain to you the energies that we put into the system of the Earth climate in comparison to one Hiroshima-type bomb. Here's Robert Oppenheimer. He spoke briefly after the detonation of the first test bomb. He makes reference to the Bhagavad Gita, a Hindu scripture, in which he says that man has become death.
In the dead silence of the morning, at 5:29:45 Mountain War time, the Jornada del Muerto was bathed in an intense flash of a light that man had only seen from the stars.
He knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita, Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
Here you see a breakdown of the deaths caused by World War II in the tenths of millions, with the former Soviet Union leading the toll. A tremendous amount of suffering caused by miscalculation, ignorance, and the aggressive drives in the human mind. Now, a paper appeared in Science magazine just recently, asking us to reimagine what it is to be human. And given that human expansionism is causing so many problems in the world, why don't we do something about it? Here you see a video that points to the core cause of the catastrophe in waiting, namely the accumulation of CO2, carbon dioxide, a gas that traps the heat of the sun on the surface of the earth. And you can see the relentless accumulation year by year in the sawtooth pattern on the right that shows that we are approaching now and have exceeded 400 parts per million. This is the direct cause of increased global warming and all the other consequences that are now occurring on an ever-increasing scale and with ever-increasing speed. I think this is quite a mesmerizing curve because it is relentless. There is no decrease anywhere. It's just increasing monotonically from year to year compared to pre-industrial times. There's no doubt, and 97% of all scientists dealing with this, that this is a human-caused phenomenon. In the year 2018, the International Panel on Climate Change released a report warning us that we need to keep CO2 emissions down, even reverse them. However, this report and this climate panel does not really take into account so-called feedbacks that are already occurring in and above of the CO2 emission caused physical changes in our environment. So here we are approaching 400 parts per million and are now exceeding it. Now, what have we done about it? Well, really nothing. There have been some promises and commitments in the Paris Climate Agreement, but you can see here that the emissions of carbon are increasing almost monotonically, broken down by different countries, and the red curve is the one that you want to focus on, showing you that we are increasing this at a staggering rate. So it's been estimated that the increased emission of carbons are the equivalent of 400,000 Hiroshima-sized atomic bombs that we are increasing each day into the atmosphere. 400,000 Hiroshima-type bombs. Here's a brief summary of how climate change can be put together, at least with regard to the Arctic.
Where the largest ice sheet in the northern hemisphere is simply melting away.
The melt is winning this game.
We've now broken all-time records for 3 consecutive years.
As oceans continue to rise, flooding the streets of American cities half a world away.
What happens in the Arctic doesn't stay in the Arctic.
Imagine a world where hurricanes and heat waves wreak havoc.
Breaking news as Hurricane Irma continues to show no mercy.
Just a hellstorm. The fire just whipped.
Or politicians deny the problem as temperatures continue to rise.
It's a hoax. I mean, it's a money-making industry, okay?
Greenland is an epicenter for climate change.
What if I told you this is already happening, right here, right now? That we are the primary cause, and that only we have the power to stop it. This is Greenland. Though you will find very little greenery here, home to some of the most stunning wildlife on the planet, the world's largest island is more than 80% made up of pure ice.
It's only from the air that you really get a sense of the scale and the enormity of this ice sheet. And what's just staggering to imagine is that in the center of the island, this ice is 2 miles thick.
It looks as though time has stood still for thousands of years. But this environment reflects the big changes in our world's atmosphere. As the planet gets warmer, the Arctic is heating up at double the rate, and Greenland in particular is warming even faster. Jason Box is an American climate scientist who has been coming to this remote corner of the world for more than 20 years.
The amount of water that's produced all across this landscape has increased, like it's doubled in the last 50 years.
Doubled in the last 50 years.
Everywhere you go in Greenland, you can see and hear the ice sheet melting. Sometimes a drip, sometimes a roar. Its surface is etched with fast-flowing rivers that carry the meltwater deep down to the bed.
This water cascades down thousands of feet and eventually makes its way to the bed. And it's heating the bed of the ice sheet. Everything's kind of stacking up that the ice is going faster than forecast.
And no sign of slowing down.
The melt is winning this game.
And the more Greenland melts, the more it speeds up the melting process.
Scene 1, Apple, take 1.
I'm on the phone with Jim on one of our regular check-ins. Jim, nothing's happening.
Jim, it's going well. We had some serious bouts of wind, but other than that, things are fairly well set up here. We've got some continuous time lapse here.
It's starting, Adam. I think. Adam, it's starting.
Oh wait, Jim, this is the big piece is starting to cast. Let me call you back.
Hold that. Okay, bye.
Still going?
Yeah, in that V section right there. Holy shit, look at that big bird rolling. All 4 running, right?
Look at that. You see how? Look at the whole thing.
having faces 300, sometimes 400 feet tall. Pieces of ice were shooting up out of the ocean 600 feet and then falling. The only way that you can really try to put it into scale with human reference is if you imagine Manhattan. And all of a sudden, all of those buildings just start to rumble and quake and peel off and just fall over and roll around. This whole massive city just breaking apart in front of your eyes.
Here we talk about methane release, methane being another greenhouse gas, and you can see that in the last 10 years there has been tremendous increase in Arctic methane release from permafrost. Here's a brief video on permafrost and the foreboding news that it holds if heating of the Earth continues, as it contains more carbon than is currently in the entire atmosphere.
What we're looking at is a legacy of the Ice Age. Permafrost and methane is a time machine. So what we're going to do is walk back in time. We're going to see old carbon, old bones, old environments, and none of those are in equilibrium with today's climate. So that's the problem. That world doesn't exist anymore, and it hasn't for 10,000 years. It was nicely and very delicately separated from this modern warmer climate by about this much moss. And when that moss goes away, whether for fire or for human disturbance or for warming, then all hell breaks loose.
Permafrost. It's maybe the part of the cryosphere that's most out of sight and mind. It's fascinating how it formed in the first place and how it got loaded with so much carbon. In a minute, we'll go back underground with Matthew Sturm from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. But first, let's meet Peter Griffith, NASA's project manager for the Above campaign, which supports more than 70 science projects studying forest and tundra vegetation, wildfires, animals like birds, caribou, and Dall sheep, methane emissions from expanding northern lakes, and the impacts of climate change on people in Alaska, Canada, and around the world. Many of those projects have some direct connection to permafrost.
Permafrost is the hidden cryosphere. It's the permanently frozen soil that surrounds the Arctic, all across Alaska, northern Canada, and then across Eurasia. The ground has been frozen during the ice ages.
During the ice ages, there was not enough snowfall in the drier regions of Alaska and Canada to form glaciers there, so the land was suitable for vegetation.
What happened is that over thousands and thousands of years, all of that plant material got compacted and frozen every winter and buried and pushed down, so that today there's 300 feet deep of frozen water and dead plants and some pieces of dead animals too. Sometimes you find woolly mammoths in the permafrost. But most of it, of the organic matter as we call it in the permafrost, is frozen plant material.
Some of that plant material is now thawing and decaying, releasing its ancient carbon into the atmosphere, sometimes in the form of methane gas bubbling out of expanding northern lakes.
We started this fuel campaign because the Arctic is the part of the planet that is warming first and fastest. And there are consequences to this for permafrost. So during the Arctic Boreal Vulnerability Experiment, we're studying permafrost with people on the ground, from aircraft flying over the region, and also from satellites in space.
Another way to understand the permafrost is to take a walk below ground with Matthew Sturm and into the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers permafrost tunnel.
And they've dug this tunnel back into the side of a hill about 200 feet, and it goes sort of sloping down so that by the end of the tunnel you're about 100 feet underground, and you're surrounded by bones sticking out of the wall from the steppe bison and mastodons that are frozen in it. There's sticks that are 40,000 years old, that you can touch with your hand. There's grass that's still green, that's tens of thousands of years old because it got frozen, right away, and it's never lost the green color.
But as fascinating as it is to see these relics of an ancient era, or to see a tree split in half by thawing soil, or even to light a ball of methane on fire from under winter ice, at the end of the day, Peter and his colleagues want to know just how much organic matter is frozen in that permafrost, and how fast it might be released.
Currently, we think that there is something on the order of 2 to 3 times as much carbon locked up as frozen organic matter in permafrost as there is carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So releasing all of that organic carbon from permafrost into the atmosphere would be a real game changer. That would be a tremendous transformation.
What the scientist is not saying is that releasing this carbon from permafrost would totally push the Earth into a hothouse gas Earth that is not hospitable to life and will lead to extinction, including human extinction. So we continue to increase our emissions of carbon, as you can see here, in an unrelating fashion. As a result of human activity, there have been increasing levels of extinction. Here you see a picture of drought in Australia. And here's a segment here in this picture on the extinction rate of animal populations all over the world. And you can see there's a uniform decline of the diversity of life on Earth. Here is an image of coral reefs, which are doomed to extinction as well as the temperature on Earth increases. Complex life cannot exist unless it's closely interrelated with all other life. Here's a brief video from Paul Ehrlich from Stanford University speaking about mass extinction.
5 times in the past, something has happened on the planet that's killed off a very large portion of the life forms and has taken a million years to reestablish. Fortunately, the last one was 65 million years ago when the dinosaurs bit dust with a lot of other things. But we are now moving into another one of these events that could easily ruin the lives of everybody on the planet because we're utterly dependent on the other organisms for our food, for our climate, for all sorts of things that we must have, the so-called natural services that other organisms provide. There's all kinds of evidence of this, not just in the loss of species, but in the loss of populations that give us those services. For instance, we are not likely to lose the honeybee as a species, but we're already losing it in lots of places where it's very important, say, for pollinating your almond orchards. There is a denier set of people who say, no, the biologists are crazy, they're exaggerating, we're not, species aren't disappearing all over the place, we're not entering a 6th mass extinction. The people at Berkeley studied the best fossil record for doing this, that is the mammal fossil record, and took a look at, on average, how fast were mammals going extinct when there wasn't a mass extinction episode. Extinction goes on all the time, but what makes one a mass extinction episode? And it turns out that they found that the going on all the time rate was about 2 times as fast as had previously been thought. But when you look at a conservative estimate of how fast mammals are going extinct today, it runs somewhere between, say, 15 and 100 times as fast as the new fast rate from the past. What our paper is basically the icing on the cake. It shows without any significant doubt that we are now entering the 6th great mass extinction event.
So we humans appear to have a superiority complex. We believe ourselves to be at the apex of life, and therefore we are entitled to use all other life for our own purposes. We have an invisible belief system that the earth belongs to humanity, and that the planet exists to give resources for the betterment of people, and that human beings are obviously superior. Displacement of perceived interiors, wild, non-human, indigenous people has occurred, of course. The differential imperative that we are superior to all other species is operational, and we are unable to discern any reason for limitations of human expansion. We are blindsided to the planet's richness and beauty. Men pay an increase for the increase in power, with alienation from that over which they exercise power. Two German philosophers, Adorno and Horkheimer. Here is a going to extinction primate. The response to anthropogenic mass extinction is muted in mainstream media. This worldview impedes humans from recoiling or even seeing the violence of the expansionism of humans on this planet. We are facing a tidal wave of human expansionism in this century, going from 7 billion people to perhaps 9 billion or more. This is a chance for us to learn to inhabit the earth with grace, greater measure, promises and material survival for all species here in the world. So why is humanity not steering towards limiting our expansion? Well, here's the biological story. Here is the evolution of man. You can see on the left-hand side here the emergence of the first human sapiens, here the human modern lineage. We have Eurasians, we have some gene flow from Denisovans and Neanderthals into humans, as discovered in the last few years. This is the story of us. Here is our expansion. We left Africa perhaps 80 to 60 million years ago. We arrived in Australia 55 million years ago. In the next slide you can see that we are so adaptable that we went everywhere on this planet, even into the Arctic regions, and we came to North America perhaps 14 million years ago. We are the dominant species of the world. How did this happen? Well, our evolution has designed us in such a way that we are highly social creatures. We are selected for cooperation. We have increased territorial behavior, which leads to extra-group warfare. We are the new super predator. There is no other species that can measure up to us. We have invented tools in the Stone Age with high technology expertise, which make our projectiles much more lethal when we go hunting. Microlithic technology. We are the new super predator. So the answer lies deeper because of the ecological crisis. We have a pervasive worldview that imbues the trends of more and more cachet of the inevitability and legitimacy of human expansion. The belief of superiority and entitlement, or human supremacy, manifest in a range of anthropocentric commonplace assumptions. Linguistic construction, institutional regimes, and everyday actions of individual group and nation states and corporate actors. Harking back to what the Buddha says, all this is based on a profound misunderstanding as to who we are. The Buddha makes frequently reference to all sentient beings. One of the ideas of liberation from suffering is not only to reduce suffering of humans, but carry this message and carry this release from suffering to all sentient beings. A totally inclusive view of life on earth. We have failed this and misjudged who we are. This has to do with our erroneous view of what a self is and what a human is. We will in future talks explore this profound cognitive misunderstanding that has led us here to the brink of a catastrophe, which will make the catastrophes we have seen in World War I and World War II pale by comparison. So the year 2018 strikes me as a year of apathy, complacency in the face of powerful, persuasive evidence that we are on the brink of destruction, which may very well include us. We'll see you soon again here for a talk at Behavioral Health 2000.